Rima Basharnitsan, the founder and CEO of Dialogue. Welcome to 10 by 20, a series of 10 questions discussed in 20-minute dialogues with local and international leaders doing visionary work at the intersection of people, technology, and society. Welcome back to 10 by 20. I'm thrilled to introduce today's guest, Dana Bryson, Senior Vice President of Social Impact at Study.com. With over 25 years in public, startup, and nonprofit sectors, Dana has advocated for communities of color working to increase social sector outcomes and shareholder value. Dana oversees the company's equitable education initiatives, including the Working Scholars Program, which is a debt-free, accelerated degree pathway for working adults. And she's also overseeing the Keys to the Classroom program, which helps aspiring educators prepare for and pass their teacher certification exams. Welcome, Dana. Super excited to have you.
Thank you. Very glad to be here.
Yeah. Well, I'll kick us right off and ask you our first question, which is, tell me more about you and how your past has led you to the present, and what are you kind of thinking about right now?
What am I doing here?
Yeah.
Thank you. And when I try to sum up my upbringing and kind of my formative years, I think about intersectionality. Because I am a biracial woman of color. And so I grew up in a mixed race family, was also a divorced family, and my parents are both gay. And so I grew up in the gay community, in a mixed race family, in a mixed religion family of Jewish and Catholic. And so I really understood, I didn't know it any other way from a very young age. And so when I reflect on what it was like to grow up as me, it really felt like I was in those interstitial spaces. And I think that the work pathways that I've chosen and the community advocacy work that I'm doing is all about those margins and those spaces in between where sort of different worlds overlap and you have to understand commonality.
I love that. And I relate to that too.
Yeah. Yes.
What do you think about the intersectionality and sort of those in between, right? The liminal spaces that were created for you as a child. What do you think that brings to your current work or to your life in general, not even specific to like your profession?
I think it brings a lot of compassion. I think it brings a lot of compassion for different perspectives, because I didn't know about what the boxes were. I just knew that there was a blend and I was in the blend of things. And so it's hard for me to see the boxes as much. And I find that in my professional work, in my community activism work, it helps me now. It was kind of hard as a child because it felt, I could find all the people I was different from. I couldn't check my box, right? It's a lot of boxes. But now I think it really brings strength to leadership and decision making and community, help working with community to lift voices, because I can see those in between spaces. And so that's it feels like an asset now. It was hard as a kid because it's not great to be different and 10 years old.
No, absolutely. As you were talking, one of the things that popped up in my mind is like, how do you know you belong? How did you know you belonged? Or did you feel like?
I did. I felt like because of my family. Just so much love and support unconditionally from my parents and from my grandparents, who were really, actually, I didn't know two of my grandparents. I hardly knew them at all because they disowned my mother, who was white, for marrying my father, who's Black. But I feel no animosity. I learned so much from my father's parents, Babe and Saul, who were social activists in Harlem in the 40s and, worked for workers' rights. And my grandmother was marching in peace marches, through her 80s until she died. And that, the North Star for me growing up was around speaking up and speaking out. That was how we did it. That's how we validated. That's how we shared in our communities. And we couldn't afford not to, we couldn't. And so I didn't know it any other way. And so now I'm so thankful that I learned it at a young age, that it's just part of me. And I don't see it another way, which it served me. Yeah.
That's interesting because, like you said, like checking off all the boxes or half of the boxes, right?
Yeah.
In a way makes you belong to everything, even if it's a little bit, right? A little bit of everything. And then a lot of like sort of your own unique contribution to your community.
This is a true story. On my birth certificate, actually, I think it was my big brother's, and my mom had to check the boxes for race. This is in New York State. She crossed them all out and wrote human and added a box, right? Like, so they rejected it and sent it back. But still, it was like, that's, that was literally, we were adding another box. And so that's been, that just is, that's just present. It's present with me in my pack. It's not heavy, but it's part of me.
No, absolutely. And I do wonder, like, who comes up with the boxes, right? Is there like some sort of central agency that determines that somehow now, like white versus white European versus white Jewish or white Christian or white whatever else your belief systems are, or culture is, then becomes a box? Or is it what the organization values and deems a category, right?
Well,
Or, whatever form you're filling out.
It's such a great question. And I've, created so many surveys over the years and the, public sector work that I've done that I was always looking for the, what is the right answer? How do you represent people and how are you inclusive? But I can tell you from doing some graduate work in degree in public policy that the Census Bureau and the definitions that they come up with equal dollars. And so that can be very easily manipulated. So we are watching that closely when there's ever a proposed change.
Yes.
As an aside. Right?
Yes. There was a project that actually Brittany and another friend of mine, Amy, worked on called Come to Your Senses here in the Bay Area.
Okay. Yeah.
Raised awareness around like actually filling it out, making sure it's part of it.
Fantastic.
And I can tell you, myself included, how many people did not know that census equals dollars.
Yeah.
Like it literally was like, oh, what is this thing I have to fill out as part of like living here? But then, oh yeah, that actually makes sense because that's how much the city's the number of dollars the city's going to get.
Yeah.
And not enough awareness, I think, is raised around like citizenship, right? And what that truly means when you think about your contribution to community and what
your responsibility is
value. Yeah.
It's a social contract, right? And so there's responsibilities and privileges, I think. And we think a lot about the privileges and maybe not enough about the responsibilities.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, all of this kind of came out of your experience, right? As a human being living, right? And so how did you come to this role right now at study.com? It seems to be like something that encompasses all of the things that you're passionate about. And then you get to like birth these programs that.
Yeah, it is fantastic. I mean, I was really attracted to the work of study.com because of the founder, Adrian Ridner, who, came to this country's, first gen college graduate, came to this country from Latin American high school, didn't speak the language, and was really struggling in high school in California to fit in and to understand what was happening, to understand the courses, and to really excel. And he has, a special needs brother who really wasn't fitting into what was happening here. And so he really started this mission-driven company that is really focused on access to education for all. And so it was, discussions with Adrian that really got me, and the co-founder Ben that really got me interested. And then the challenge of, okay, we've been around 2 decades. We're in 9,000 school districts, 1 million people a day come to the site. We want to increase access to education. How do we do that in a way that matters, right? How do we work with communities? And so it was that back to that intersectionality I talked about in the beginning. I think that made me such a strong, potentially strong leader in this role, because it's not business or schools, or it's like, how do you find those pieces and make those connections where they might not be so obvious. And so, the one that I've been working on for the last 6 or 9 months, which has just been a phenomenal project, is called Keys to the Classroom.
Mm-hmm.
And really, it's working to grow and diversify the teacher pipeline in this country.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so if you think about, the teacher shortage, and you're a parent as well. I've got a 10 and 12-year-old, and just like so many people really struggled during COVID, and had a new understanding about how hard, what a commitment it is, and what a profession it is to be a teacher, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we, you go go get a bachelor's degree. A teacher candidate would go get a bachelor's degree, in some states a master's, and then they all have to pass a certifying test to be a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
Half of the people who pass the test fail the first time. 25% of the people who take the test never pass. They don't retake it, or they don't pass if they do retake it.
Mm-hmm.
So we're already, and so when I dug in, those numbers were really disturbing to me. And when I dug into it a little bit more, I saw that only 38% of Black African American candidates pass the test on a national basis, right?
Mm-hmm.
All of and these are people who've already gone to school, they've studied. And so we, at Study, we have a full academic curriculum for 4th through 12th grade, but we also offer 1,500 test prep courses. We have a full suite of all the teacher test prep courses. So we partner with communities. We donate test prep, access to test prep materials, with partners that are focused on alternative licensure, and really diversifying the pipeline. So we launched it less than a year ago. We have 25 partners in 20 states. We just made some big announcements about a partnership with the New Teacher Project this week. There'll be more coming out.
That's exciting.
And the most exciting thing, Rima, is really that we're building these coalition of advocates who are learning from each other, because these disparate programs of, grow your own programs, which are so important, really focused on teachers who've been working in that community, who maybe are paraprofessionals, and we want to keep them in that community and not parachute in a teacher from out of state who will stay a year or two and leave. So it's been really exciting work. I love our partners. We're collecting great data. We've got, 5 times the national average of African American teacher cadets in our program right now. And so we're really hoping to try to make a dent on both a practical basis, on a policy basis, in terms of advocacy. And if I can just say one more thing about it, I can tell I'm passionate, so you have to cut me off.
No.
The reason really that this hits home for me is because of our students, right? Because we know we have hard data that shows that if you have, as a student, if you have a same race ethnicity teacher, you will perform better in both some standardized tests, high school persistence rates, and self-esteem, right? And it's the same thing, across, we could talk about curriculum and all kinds of other things, but I really want our students, like me and like you and like others, to see people who reflect our culture and our heritage, who understand in the classroom. And so this is an initiative that's really ultimately aimed at helping student outcomes. So it's been a lot of fun and very exciting, and a really rewarding, piece of the work.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And as you were talking, also the other thing that came up for me is it's not just about the education, right? I feel like when we are around people that look familiar or look, we can relate to each other. I think our general outcomes, like life outcomes, are better, right? Our health outcomes are better.
Absolutely.
Our ways of feeling belonging in community is better. And it's interesting that we're coming, it almost feels like in so many ways we're backing into an obvious, right? Like this is how humanity started, right? Like this from this moment of like, oh yeah, like community, like similarity, commonality, you know, and just sort of ritual and all of that and culture, right? Just in terms of like people, right? As we evolved. And then we got all sorts of messy with all of this capitalism, socialism, all of the things that the structures of society that were created for whatever reasons at the time that knowingly or unknowingly oppressed people, whatever people want to kind of attribute. But then here we are again trying to instill this sort of like very simple concept of relating to one another and seeing each other and meeting each other where we're at, right? And it's sort of what we were all born with anyway. So we're almost just like trying to resuscitate something that's already existing within us to remind ourselves that actually this is how we are supposed to be. And somehow it's super difficult. It's almost like we're like about to like code on the table. Do you know if I'm like a medical analogy? And that's where I feel like our society is kind of at right now, like globally. It's like constant, you know, ebbs and flows of things that feel and don't feel very good for others and for ourselves and for others. And
I agree with that. And also the systems, you know, the systems that maintain the power structure. I think, you know, I think about Florida because I'm, you know, with the, you know, some of what was in the news today about, you know, the governor there, you know, saying that he's not going to allow African-American history as an AP course, which is ridiculous and obscene, right? And that's the power structure. And so I think about that as well. And I, you know, it's always been done through community and through coalition building, and it will continue to be done that way. So I'm
totally. It seems to me that at this point in time, it's almost like, shouldn't the fight get a little easier? Right. But it feels like it's still the same. It's just as hard as it always was. But I think the work you guys are doing is so important, especially because I think correct me if I'm wrong, it seems to me that there's a huge shortage of educators.
There is an educator shortage. We don't value the profession. The profession is primarily women. It's primarily white women. It is not a highly paid profession. And our teachers are so valuable. It is a profession. It's not something that you need to be highly skilled to be able to be an educator. And we need to show respect in terms of pay and treatment of our educators. And I think it's been a really hard couple years. And so we're working on initiatives to try to make that a little easier. And this is one of them.
Totally.
The other thing that I'll just say is that one thing you asked how I came to study and .com, and one of the things that I, having done, you know, is worked as a mayor's chief of staff and for about a decade in public service at the local level, and then a lot of kind of impact investing kind of work. I'm so interested in the role that technology can play for good, right?
Yeah.
Because we hear scale and you think, you know, it's like, come on. But actually, let's scale a diverse, you know, teacher pipeline. We can do that, and education technology can do that. You know, we can scale language access for English language learners so that we can scale, you know, interventions for autism with technology online. And so studies really leading, you know, in this space, looking at access to education and, you know, kind of what's at the next frontier.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's a really exciting time right now. Is there a particular way that you would say that human connection has shaped your work?
Interesting question. I mean, I don't know. I'm trying to think about what isn't human connection. That's the first thing that comes to mind is, you know, love, trust, respect, you know, coming from a place of peace, and really for me, radical kindness. That, you know, that is where I, you know, try to come from. It doesn't always work, but that's my intention. And I think trying to connect to the human in someone else before you think or see or want anything else, I've had, some of the most meaningful interactions from it coming from exactly that place, whether it's, and some of the most honest connections, finding the human piece. And then we can see what else is there, having to do with a transaction someone might not want, or an interest, but like respecting people and showing respect, regardless. So to me, it feels like all work is about human connection. All systems work is about human connection. And I'm not sure if it's true or not, but that's how I experience it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I feel like that's what you're doing daily, right? As you're providing services to people in a way that's going to make them show up in a way that they want, and help them do that well.
Right.
Yeah. Are you ready for some rapid fire questions?
Yes. I got my tennis shoes on, so that's good. Yeah.
Oh, good. Okay. When do you feel most connected to others?
When I'm rested and when I'm relaxed.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah. And when and where are you happiest?
With my family in nature.
What intersection of disciplines are you currently most fascinated by?
Ooh, so this is very recent. This was an aha that for me in the last weeks. Art and advocacy. Art and advocacy. And I have a different understanding and experience from going to an art exhibit recently called The Dirty South at the Denver Museum of Contemporary Art, about the history of musical roots and the experience of Black Americans in the South. And of all of my social justice work and public policy and city leadership, this art and advocacy intersection to me felt like a new space for me, not new for others, but I've doing so much around technology and food systems and education, but this art and advocacy was like something new, something there that I'm interested, I'm curious about.
Cool. That's good to know. I have got a lot of thoughts around those intersections.
Okay.
I'll tell you later, but I mostly sit on arts boards and different and engage with, our work engages in sometimes in these dialogues, right? Cross-disciplinary, cross-sectional.
Yes.
Cross-sector, I should say. And we always try to bring in sort of a perspective of someone in the cultural arts space so that it actually creates an opening for the dialogue to shift and actually expand in a way that it wouldn't have otherwise expanded. Yes. And so in my personal life, I participate quite a bit in the art and activist sort of intersection.
Oh, okay.
Because of my curiosity around what's possible when we actually listen to what's happening. Yeah. In the ecosystems that we're part of. Because I don't think we do a lot of listening. We do a lot of talking, but we don't necessarily do a lot of listening. So anyway, more on that later.
Yeah, I would love to hear more about that.
But what is your greatest regret?
Greatest regret? Probably worry that I've had about things that your grandmother would tell you don't need to worry, it will be okay. But sort of the time I've lost worried about whatever the thing is, that worry is just not helpful. It's not a helpful thing, I don't believe. And so that's the first thing that comes to mind. But the second is not going to I was invited to South Africa to stay with Winnie Mandela when Nelson Mandela got out of jail, and for various reasons that had to do with personal conflicts I had at home, I didn't go.
Yeah.
And Whoa, that'd have been really, I'd love to have had that experience. It's not my
Yeah.
biggest regret, but I would have loved to have that experience.
That makes sense.
Mhm.
And what's the one thing you wish to pass down to the next generation?
Oh, self-love.
Hmm.
Really, like if every one of the youngins coming up loved themselves so much, what would be possible?
That's beautiful. And what a good way to end our conversation today. Self-love. Thanks so much for joining us, Dana.
Thank
So good
you
to
so
have
much.
you.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. I've enjoyed the discussion.
Thanks for tuning in to Dialogue's 10 by 20 interview series, where we ask 10 questions in 20 minutes to profile international leaders working at the intersection of people, technology, and society. That's all for today's episode. Like and subscribe below to get notified for our upcoming interviews. Follow us on Instagram at dialogue_co.